Good evening, and welcome to the Family Education Webinar Series for 2026. This is our first webinar. It's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP benefits. My name is Brittany Provost. I am a member of the DSCC team, Division of Specialized Care for Children, also known as DSCC. And DSCC is the one hosting this webinar series, so I just want to remind everybody of our vision and our mission. So our vision is that children and youth with special health care needs and their families will be at the center of a seamless support system that improves the quality of their lives. Our mission is that we partner with Illinois families and communities to help children and youth with special health care needs connect to services and resources, which is a big part of why we do a webinar like this, so that we can give families and community members the information directly, so that you have that information to make decisions about benefits and healthcare that affect your lives. The presentation materials are going to be in English, so all the slides that you're seeing on the screen are going to be in English. What you're going to be hearing right now is in English, other than if you're in the interpretation line. If you've selected Spanish as your language, the information will be translated verbally. The slides are in English and Spanish, though, on the DSCC website. So if you'd like to reference either version of them, you can go to the website to find a copy there. And then the other thing I like to kind of say is, if you are especially listening to this as the recording, that this information is current as of today's date, March 10th, 2026. Information can change quickly, so just keep that in mind as you're listening to all of the information that you're hearing. All right, that is the end of the housekeeping information. I am going to turn it over to Tyler Stratton to talk about the SNAP presentation. All right, Tyler, all yours.
All righty. Okay, we should be all set now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Tyler Stratton, Director of Community Engagement at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, and I'm here to share information about the changes to the SNAP program, as well as some resources for how to best navigate these changes moving forward. For our agenda this evening, we will start with a brief introduction to the food depository, as well as learning about some key terms and data to ground our conversation. We will then talk about SNAP more specifically, what it is, what are the changes that are being implemented, and what is the impact to our communities. To close us out, I will share some action items as well as resources, and I will pause twice, about halfway through, and then again at the end to answer any questions from anyone tuning in this evening. A little bit about the Greater Chicago Food Depository. We are the food bank for Cook County, and our mission is to end hunger. We were founded back in 1979, and today we work with over 850 partners and programs all across the county to distribute food, connect neighbors to public benefits like SNAP, and to advocate for solutions that address the root causes of hunger and meet the needs of the communities that we serve. Before we talk about SNAP more specifically, I wanted to share again some key terms and just a bit of data that will help to set the foundation for the information that I will share about the program more specifically. So, three key terms to be aware of and that you might hear throughout our presentation this evening. The first is food insecurity. And we like to share these definitions just because food insecurity is different from hunger. And so, food insecurity is really a set of circumstances that prevent access to adequate and nutritious food. Hunger, on the other hand, is really the physical sensation that an individual might feel in their body when they do not have enough food. And so we like to create that distinction because you will hear both terms used throughout the conversation this evening. And then lastly is the safety net. The safety net is a set of programs available here in the United States that provide critical support to people who need it. So SNAP is an example of a safety net program, as is Medicaid or WIC and many other programs that folks here might be familiar with. Moving into a bit of data for some context, it is estimated that about 1 in every 8 Illinois residents experiences food insecurity. And so if you take a look at the map on the screen, you'll see that the darker the color green, the higher the rate of food insecurity. And so Cook County, which is our service area, is highlighted in that top corner. And as you can see from the map, in Cook County, there is a higher rate of food insecurity than many other areas of the state of Illinois. And so, if we drill down a little bit further and look at the Chicagoland area more specifically, we get some insight into this higher rate of food insecurity. And so, whereas across the state, it's about 1 in 8 households experiences food insecurity, here in Cook County, we see about 1 in 5 households experiencing food insecurity. And when a household also has a child in the home, that number increases even further. About 1 in 4 households with children, or about 25% of households with children in Cook County, is experiencing food insecurity. And so overall, we know that the demand for food assistance is high. And we see that through the work that we do every day in partnership with our network, where we are currently serving about 175,000 plus households every single month through some of our food access and grocery programs. So that was, again, just a bit of grounding to set the stage for our conversation. I now want to talk a little bit more about SNAP more specifically, and then we'll get into what are some of the changes that are coming down the pipeline. A little bit about SNAP. SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Many people may know it through other names such as food stamps, EBT, or Link. But just wanted to clarify that I will be using SNAP for the purposes of this conversation, but regardless of what you call it, we're talking about the same program. SNAP is a program that is regulated at the federal level by the United States Department of Agriculture, and it is administered at the state level. Here in Illinois, the program is administered by the Illinois Department of Human Services. SNAP essentially provides food benefits to eligible households and is meant to supplement a grocery budget, therefore increasing access to food that is essential to a family or an individual's daily life. SNAP benefits can help eligible families purchase additional food. Eligible food items may include breads and cereals, fresh produce, non-alcoholic beverages, meats and proteins, dairy products, as well as some plants and seeds. There are also items that cannot be purchased with SNAP benefits, which you'll see on the screen, such as prepared foods, alcohol, meals from restaurants, as well as non-food items. Now I want to talk a little bit about why SNAP matters and why it's so important for communities, especially in areas like Cook County, where we see a higher rate of food insecurity. To put it simply, SNAP helps to put more food on the table for those that are eligible for the program. You'll see a little bit of information on the screen here about eligibility, but essentially, eligibility is determined by a number of factors, including but not limited to income level, household size, and residency. To help screen for SNAP eligibility, the Illinois Department of Human Services has an online screener that is available on their website. And a few tips for when utilizing the screener is first and foremost, to just do your best to answer the questions honestly and again to the best of your ability. Additionally, when answering the questions on the screener, consider all of the individuals who are a part of your household and that you may share food with. It's also important to consider any income that you've received in the past 30 days, and any eligible expenses such as rent or out-of-pocket expenses. The online screener is not an application, but can help determine if you are likely to be eligible for SNAP benefits. A little bit more about why SNAP matters. So, first, as I briefly mentioned, SNAP increases food access for all of those in need. And so, when we think about the work that the Food Depository does as a food bank and all of the food that we distribute to the community, the SNAP program still distributes 9 times as much food by putting benefits directly in the hands of community members. So again, for every one meal that a food bank like the Food Depository provides, SNAP provides the equivalent of 9 meals. And so it really is a huge resource that services almost 2 million people here in Illinois. Additionally, SNAP is really important for boosting the economy more broadly. When you think about individuals spending their SNAP dollars at their local grocery store, at a farmer's market, or other retailers, it's really important, again, from an economic standpoint. For every $1 spent in SNAP benefits, $1.50 is generated in local economic activity. Every single month, SNAP generates over $280 million in Cook County alone. And so the program is considered to be an economic multiplier. So we talked a little bit about the many reasons why SNAP is so important, especially in communities like Cook County, where we see higher rates of food insecurity. Back in July of 2025, what is known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed by Congress, and this bill resulted in some of the largest cuts that we've seen to SNAP in its history. And we know that this will have a major impact on people who use SNAP today, people who may need it in the future, as well as our local economy, as I just shared. Moving into the next part of our presentation, I want to highlight some of the key changes to be aware of since the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed, and how they will impact Illinois residents that receive SNAP benefits. As a quick summary, some of the changes coming to the program include increasing the amount of money the state of Illinois will have to pay to run the program, expanding work requirements for SNAP recipients, and removing SNAP eligibility from some immigrants who are here in the United States legally. So let's start with the first major change, shifting the cost of the program from the state to the state level from the federal level. Previously, SNAP benefits were 100% funded by the federal government. And as of the signing of the bill, states will now be required to cover a portion of the benefits. And so here in Illinois, that could mean that our state may need to pay an additional $800 million per year starting in October of 2027 in order to keep SNAP available to the 2 million plus Illinois residents that receive SNAP benefits today. And so this is a major change that states all across the country will be impacted by in the months and years to come. Another key change to be aware of is the expansion of work requirements. This is an expanded, rule that states that individuals between the ages of 18 and 64, unless they are exempt, must work or volunteer 80 hours a month in order to keep their SNAP benefits. The 80 hours can be made up through a combination of paid work, community service, or participation in a SNAP employment and training program. Additionally, the new rules put a time limit in place for individuals that are required to meet this work requirement that I just outlined. If a person fails to meet the work requirements, it is possible that they can only receive SNAP for 3 months within a 3-year period. And after those 3 months, the individual is at risk of losing their SNAP benefits and would need to reapply again once they have met that 80-hour a month requirement, or if they become exempt, which I'll talk about in the next slide. As I mentioned, there are some groups that are exempt from this rule, and so you'll see some of those exemptions here on the slide. For example, individuals with a physical or mental limitation to working, or individuals that are caring for a person that needs help caring for themselves, as well as, again, many others as you see here on the slide. This work reporting requirement change is really, really important for folks to be aware of. These expanded rules went into effect on February 1st. And so we highly encourage people to start getting in touch with the Illinois Department of Human Services now to report or request exemptions if they apply. The third and final change to highlight today is the change in immigrant eligibility. There are now certain categories of legally present immigrants who will no longer be eligible for SNAP here in across the country and here in Illinois, starting as early as April 1st of this year. In Illinois, this will impact about 16,000 immigrants who were previously eligible for SNAP, but now will lose access to their SNAP benefits. In some cases, there may be some state-funded food assistance programs outside of SNAP that may be available to those impacted by this change. And so we encourage anyone who's been impacted to get in contact with a benefit enrollment specialist to determine if there are other options available. In summary, most of the 2 million Illinois residents who are on SNAP today will be impacted by these changes and may need to take action in order to keep their SNAP benefits. I'm going to pause here for questions and then move into more information about what action steps people can take after that. If there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A function, and I'm happy to answer that. We also will have another Q&A section at the very end as well. Someone asked if a person with disabilities is an example. So yes, that is one of the exemptions that an individual could apply for. I'll go back to that screen really briefly. But yes, someone who may be deemed physically or mentally unable to work, that includes being disabled as well. In some cases, for example, if an individual is on SSI or SSDI, the state may have that information already and will be able to apply an exemption there. But in some cases, individuals will need to fill out a form, which I'll talk about later, and submit that to the Illinois Department of Human Services as a part of their SNAP case. So I'll share more resources about that in just a bit. Okay. We got another question. Is SSI benefits considered assets in households? Is it considered an asset in household income? That is a great question. I am going to recommend, just because everyone's case is different, I'm going to recommend that you connect with someone from our team, our benefits enrollment team. I'll talk about how to get in contact with them in a few slides. But for specific questions like that, it could depend, and I don't want to give the wrong answer. So just recommending you connect with a member of our team directly about your specific case to answer that question. But it is a good one. Another question, what is the earliest age an individual with a household of one being disabled can apply for SNAP benefits? That is a great question. If you could add some more detail to your question, if you don't mind, I'm just curious, is are you talking about kind of a parent that may have just one additional person in their household? Um, yes, if you can provide some clarity there. Or are you asking about children? Okay. I'm going to move on with the presentation, but if you don't mind just sharing a bit more detail, that would be helpful, and I can get back to your question at the second Q&A portion. Awesome. Thank you all for the questions. So before we move forward, I want to acknowledge that this is a lot of information and it can be challenging to understand and to navigate and can bring about a mix of emotions. But with that, I wanted to reemphasize that the Food Depositories team, as well as our network of partners, are here to support in any way that we can to help individuals, families, and community organizations to navigate all of this. And so we'll talk about what that looks like in the next few slides. First, if you or a loved one is currently receiving SNAP benefits, first and foremost, it's really important to look out for updated guidance from the Illinois Department of Human Services about these changes and any action steps that you may need to take in order to keep your SNAP benefits. They have been sending out letters and notices in the mail and online. And so please keep an eye out for any information that comes down from the state agency. Second, it's really important to determine if you are exempt from the work requirement or if you may need to meet it. And so I'll talk about some resources on how to do that next. And then last but certainly not least, please help to share this information with others. Spreading awareness about these changes is really important in this moment to make sure that as many people who are receiving SNAP benefits are aware of what's going on and also know where to go to get trusted information. And so please let people know again where they can go to get support in this moment. The QR code that you see here on the slide will bring you to a page on our website, which will share additional information about some of these next steps. For anyone who may be impacted by the work requirement rule specifically, um, as I mentioned, there are opportunities for people to request an exemption if they fall into one of those approved categories. And so the first QR code that you see here on the screen is a work requirement screener that people can use and answer a few questions, and it'll determine whether you are likely to be eligible for an exemption or if you might need to meet that 80-hour a month work requirement. We are recommending that people use the screener. It is, again, a few quick questions and doing that ASAP so that you can take your next steps, whether it be submitting an exemption form or connecting with a benefit enroller for some additional support. The exemption request form, excuse me, can be submitted to the state agency through a number of different routes. First and foremost is the ABE Manage My Case portal. You can also call the Illinois Department of Human Services or visit one of their offices. The Food Depositories team can also support with filling out forms and submitting them to the state agency as well. And so more information to come on that shortly. One of the key takeaways for our time here today is that even with all of the changes that I just shared, SNAP is still intact and benefits are available. And so anyone who is in need of SNAP benefits now or in the future is encouraged to screen for eligibility and apply for the program if they are eligible. It is important, again, for food access and just to ensure that those benefit dollars are not going unused. And so we have representatives at the food depository who can support, which I'll talk about next. You can also apply online through the IDHS website or get assistance from many of the other community-based organizations that offer enrollment support. Our team at the food depository, again, as well as many other partners in our network, are available to help individuals navigate the SNAP application process, to submit documents, or even provide support with other public benefits like Medicaid and WIC. For SNAP more specifically, some of the documents that may be needed when applying may include proof of income, proof of identification, Illinois residency, social security numbers for all members of the household, as well as proof of expenses. For folks who are looking to renew their SNAP benefits, a SNAP redetermination letter would also be needed. But again, our team can provide some support with that, both over the phone, in person, or at our offices. Next, I want to move into a few additional resources. The ones that you see here on the screen are specifically regarding the work reporting requirement. First and foremost, the Food Depository, as well as the state's Volunteerism Commission, Serve Illinois, have worked together to launch a platform called Galaxy Digital. This is a platform that really centralizes volunteer opportunities across the state. And so organizations can post their volunteer opportunities here on Galaxy Digital, but individuals who are looking for opportunities can also register for the platform and find volunteer opportunities that are most convenient to you. And this platform also allows you to pull reports of your volunteer hours so that you can submit them to the state with hopes of meeting that 80-hour a month work requirement. And so this is a new resource. Opportunities are being added every single day, but it is a helpful one-stop shop for folks who are looking for volunteer opportunities. There are also a number of approved SNAP employment and training programs available across the state, and those are listed on the IDHS website. So for folks who are looking for kind of workforce development programs, that is a wonderful resource. And then lastly, for people who may already be volunteering or may find a volunteer opportunity on their own, we also have a template that organizations can use to verify service hours. Those hours can then be provided to someone who is receiving SNAP benefits as proof of their community service hours as well. And so feel free to get in contact with our team for a copy of that community service verification letter. A few additional resources that I wanted to highlight very briefly. First and foremost is the Find Food tool on the Food Depository's website. This is a publicly available map that helps individuals to locate the nearest food program near them, whether it be a food pantry or a soup kitchen. There are many different programs listed here all across the county. And so by typing in your address or your zip code, you are able to find where the programs are, what their schedule is, and what other services they offer. And so that is, again, available at our website. As I mentioned previously, the Food Depository also has a team of individuals that is available to provide SNAP application assistance or just connecting to other public benefits and community resources. And so our neighbor services team is there to support over the phone, once again, coming into our offices, and they are often out in the community as well. You can also reserve time to meet with our team and set up a meeting via our website. And then lastly, our nutrition resource bank is available as well that provides healthy recipes, videos, and tutorials. And so you can access all of these tools and supports and more via our website, which is chicagosfoodbank.org, or by giving us a call at 773 24/7 food. Before we wrap up and move to our last round of Q&A, I want to share just a few other items that can help us meet this moment and help us protect SNAP. First is, again, as I mentioned, help us to spread the word. We have toolkits that are available that can help anyone amplify the messages that you heard today and spread the word as far and wide as possible. The toolkits include social media posts, language for newsletters, flyers, and more. And all of the toolkit resources are available in both English and Spanish. You can access the materials using the QR code that you see here on the slide. Myself and our community engagement team is also working with community-based organizations, schools, churches, any other kind of community groups to partner and bring awareness to the broader community. We are looking to reach, people who are receiving SNAP benefits now, community-based organizations, advocates, etc. And we are really interested in collaborating with folks on how we can best reach people across the county and really amplify these messages. And so, if that is something that's of interest to you, whether it's just to brainstorm or to partner again for an upcoming event, please do reach out to our community engagement team. There is a QR code here to fill out a request form, but I'll also include my email at the end of the presentation for anyone interested in exploring that option. And then last but not least, advocacy is really, really important in this moment as well. And so we have a number of different kind of advocacy pathways for those who are interested in getting involved in this way. First and foremost is our Advocacy Action Center. So if you are looking for regular, monthly legislative updates or quick action alerts where you can contact your representative, please sign up for our Advocacy Action Center. We also have a more in-depth program called Champion Advocates. So for those who are really looking for some more skill development and training, that is an opportunity to, get dedicated time to learn about SNAP and the key talking points, to do community outreach training or elected official training. And so that is an awesome opportunity for those who want to really deepen their advocacy. And then for any organizations that might already be involved in the advocacy space, the Food Depository is launching the Save Our SNAP Coalition, where we are bringing together organizations that are advocating all across the state to support some of the work to save SNAP moving forward. For any of these advocacy opportunities, please visit our website, chicagosfoodbank.org/advocacy. I am going to pause again here for some more Q&A. Feel free to drop anything in the chat or the Q&A box, and then I will do my best to answer. Okay, wonderful. Let's see. Okay. So I see, what is the deadline to submit an exemption form before benefits may be suspended? So that is a great question. So as an example, the work requirement rule went into effect on February 1st. And as I shared, an individual can receive SNAP for 3 months without meeting the requirement. And then at the end of that 3 month, they are at risk of losing their benefits. So as an example, if for February, a person is not meeting the 80 hours, and then they're not meeting the 80 hours for March, and then they're also not meeting the 80 hours for April, come May 1st, they are at risk of losing their benefits and would need to reapply. Um, in order to avoid that, we recommend there's not necessarily a deadline per se for submitting the exemption form, but doing so before April 30th would help to avoid that individual potentially losing their benefits on May 1st. So that was just an example, but generally speaking, there's not a deadline for the exemption form necessarily. But in this moment, because the rule is new, we are just recommending that people get that form in as soon as possible. And when filling out the form, checking off as many boxes as applies is also recommended. So hopefully that answers your question. Does a physician need to certify the individual with a disability as a if does a physician need to certify if an individual with a disability is applying for an exemption? Does the individual need to submit the SSI approval letter? And does the system connect to avoid submitting the exemption form? So that is a great question. Um, for individuals that may be on SSI or SSDI, the state of Illinois should have that information already, and therefore the exemption would be applied. For those who may be, again, deemed physically or mentally unable to work, it may require some sort of form or documentation from a doctor, but individuals are able to submit that form without that supplemental information. And so, again, filling out the form and checking that box, there is a clause on the document that essentially says the state of Illinois may reach out to get some additional information, but that information in terms of, a signed form from a physician or something along those lines, is not required in order to get the form submitted. And so getting the form submitted as soon as possible is really important. And then if the state needs more information from you, then they would reach back out after the exemption form is sent their way. Okay. Someone is asking a question about an adult child, if they were applying for SNAP, that your income would be counted and he would not be eligible for SNAP benefits. So thank you for the question. I think because that is a very specific case and there are other factors involved, I would recommend connecting with one of our benefit enrollment specialists just so they can look at the full scope of your household and your situation and really give you a tailored response. I don't want to give wrong information in this space here. And so in the next slide, I'll share how to best get in contact with our team, but that is what I would recommend there.
Hey, Tyler, if I may, I think what might be something that they might be asking about is when someone turns 19, they qualify on their own head of household for Medicaid most often,
Sure.
And I think often, at least from what I've experienced in my work with our families, is there's some confusion around how that might apply to SNAP. And I'll give my answer of what I usually say is that SNAP eligibility works differently. SNAP eligibility is usually determined by who's cooking and preparing meals together in the same household. And so that often doesn't automatically translate to a 19-year-old being on their own case as their own head of household, because most families in that situation are still living together and still qualifying as like a one single SNAP household. I do agree that looking into a very specific situation and making sure that everything's been considered, but I'll just say that like the caveat of it doesn't work the same way that Medicaid does. So the Medicaid eligibility may look differently than the SNAP eligibility.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. I saw a couple of more come in. How can I apply for SNAP with exemption? Can I go to the local office? Great question. So there are a couple different ways that you can apply or submit for an exemption. First and foremost, the Food Depositories team can help you navigate the entire application process, submitting documents, etc. And so you're welcome to get in contact with our team. They can provide phone support, or in person at our offices or out in the community. You can also go to your local office, but there are also a number of different organizations and community-based folks throughout the county as well that can provide support. I mentioned our Find Food tool earlier. That is another place to look if are typing in your address or your zip code, and some of our food programs may pop up in your area. If you click into the details, you also will be able to see if they offer public benefits or SNAP enrollment support as well. So that is another resource that I wanted to call out. Alrighty, do folks need a state ID to submit for SNAP for adults with disabilities? Great question. There is, as a part of the application process, there is proof of identification needed. It doesn't necessarily have to be a state ID per se, but they will be looking for a proof of ID. Great question. Awesome. I want to put my information up here as well. My email is there, especially for those who may be interested in collaborating to build awareness about these changes in the community. But for those of you, again, who are looking for application support, if you have specific questions about your cases, which I know I wasn't fully able to answer here tonight, but please do give our team a call. We can be reached at 773-24/7 food or 773-247-3663. Our team is happy to support with any SNAP or Medicaid related questions, and again, can support with application submission and case management as well. I'm going to check for questions one more time, but I think hopefully I covered everything.
Yeah, while
I
you're
didn't
doing
see
that, I'm
anything else.
gonna steal the slides back and
Sure.
we'll wrap up. Well, thank you, Tyler, so much for that presentation and all the information that you shared. And I do certainly know that there's a lot of unique situations. So I do encourage all of you to, connect if you need to get more information, have your specific situation reviewed. Um, Thank you all for being here today and kind of sticking with us and going through all of the technical difficulties that we had. So I apologize for that. But those of you that did stick around, I hope that you found the information helpful. All the materials will be posted on the website, like I said before, including the recording. So if you need to go back and look at it, you'll have that opportunity. When you close out of Zoom today, there'll be a survey that pops up at the end of the webinar. So if you could just take a minute, it's very short to fill out the survey. Your thoughts about how it went and what information that you want more trainings about is very, very helpful to us. That's how we build out what we're going to do for next year. So we take all of that information directly and kind of build it into the future year's trainings. So please put all of that good information in your survey. The next two webinars coming up for April and May are still, open for registration, and you can join them, or if you're not free on those dates, get the recording on the website. So just wanted to highlight that. For April, we'll have estate and financial planning, and then for May 12th, we'll have caregiver mental health. So please tune into those webinars if you're able with us. And then finally, I know Tyler gave her information, but if you do need to connect with DSCC, I've put our phone number, our email, website, and you can connect with us on social media as well. If you do have questions about today's webinar and you send an email to the US or the DSCC email, please just put in there something about like family webinar, something like that in the subject line. That'll help get it routed to us quicker if you can. Otherwise, just feel free to reach out to us if there's anything that DSCC can do to support you. All right, and that is all of our information for today. So again, thank you, Tyler, for coming and bringing this great information for us. And thank you to all of you for being here today.